We now have entire federal courthouses tainted by the Trump DOJ grand jury misconduct. We've been covering here on the MeidasTouch network high-profile grand jury misconduct cases, whether we talked about James Comey with a prosecutor who wasn't even allowed to be in the room, whether we talked about the Broadview 6, where there was something called vouching taking place, where a federal prosecutor would go to the grand jury and basically say, I'm going to vouch for this. When we saw the transcript, I've never seen anything like this. I'm going to vouch for all of this today. Trust me, I wouldn't bring this to you on a Friday. Let's get out of here quickly. I need you to sign your name. These are bad people. Let's get out of here. Such incredibly high amounts of grand jury misconduct that it's almost like unfathomable. If I put this as a fact pattern on my exams for law students, they'd be like, whoa, this is like the easiest exam professor that I've ever saw. Come on, you got to make it a little bit trickier. So it's shocking to even see. But now it's not, as I've warned, it's not just the high profile cases. We hear about those more, but this pervades now almost every case because these Trump prosecutors are going in front of the grand jury, and it's a combination of maliciousness, arrogance, and incompetence together. And they're just telling the grand jury, hey, let's get out of here today. I got 20 cases. I need 20 indictments super quick, okay? And what's happening now is you would basically be committing legal malpractice as a defense lawyer if you did not use the fact that the presumption of regularity by the DOJ is thrown out the window. So you go, we need to look at the grand jury transcript. And lawyer by lawyer, defense lawyer by defense lawyer who gets the grand jury transcript, which you would normally never get. I mean, this is grand jury secrecy stuff. It's not supposed to be turned over. But because the contagion, if you will, is so widespread of tainted grand jury proceedings, criminal defense lawyers are getting these grand jury transcripts, and almost everyone they're getting is showing vouching and misconduct. I'll give you an example right here of what went down. There's a case involving COVID-19 fraud. It's called the Loretto Hospital COVID-19 case. And we just had a federal judge in the Illinois Chicago federal courthouse having to dismiss a very serious case. I'll outline it in a moment. And here's what the judge said. Her name is Judge Sharon Johnson Coleman. She dismissed the case against two defendants, and the other two defendants, their cases are hanging in limbo. They were charged before the Trump regime, before these ones were brought. So it's possible some of the indictments are going to stick, some aren't. We'll see. But here's what the judge said. We have cases in this building that are in turmoil, and judges are trying to figure out what in the world is going on. She lit into the U.S. attorney in Chicago, Andrew Boutros, again, the same person who was overseeing the Broadview 6 prosecution, which was tainted by grand jury misconduct. And the federal judge said this is a dysfunctional office, and you're basically screwing up every case. Just to explain to you the level of seriousness of this case. So it involves a number of defendants who were involved in allegations of COVID-19 testing fraud. And the allegations are a massive scheme to defraud the government via the Health Resources and Service Administration's program for uninsured patients by submitting fake claims for COVID-19 tests that were never performed. And it's alleged that these defendants accessed personal data from over 150,000 Loretto patients and used it to support fraudulent billing for COVID tests that were never actually done, and that this doctor group allegedly submitted roughly $894 to $900 million in false COVID-19 testing claims between June 2021 and March 2022, when program funds ran out. And the government paid a ton of money. And apparently the allegations are these tests were never done, using stolen patient info to build for tests for uninsured patients. And so that's the allegation. Very, very serious stuff. Back in 2025, late 2025, there was an indictment that was unsealed. This case has been proceeding, and you never would have thought, should I look at the grand jury transcripts here? Did they vouch? Did they engage in this misconduct? But now the fallout from the Broadview case, it reminds me of when I used to be a civil litigator. There would be certain cops who would be on like a Brady list. Do they call it? They would be on this list where they were involved in habitual offending. So you would know which cop would do it over and over again. There are prosecutors now who are now being known for all of their cases, basically having tainted grand jury proceedings. And so that's what happened here, that this entire office is now known for going into grand juries and either lying to them or vouching or engaging in heinous conduct. So one by one, criminal defense lawyers, let me get that grand jury transcript. And the judges are like, hey, normally we would say no, but the presumption of regularity is out the window. And we know that every time we see one of these grand jury transcripts, there's a misconduct that's taking place. I want to bring in Harry Litman from Talking Feds. Harry, a lot of these defendants are now off. Their cases got dismissed, and everyone's entitled to a presumption of innocence. Let me be very clear, about that. But these cases are now dismissed for procedural reasons, and these are people being accused of very serious things. And when you talk about law and order, right, Donald Trump's performative, heinous, going after political enemy prosecutions have now opened up Pandora's box to show all these other cases have been tainted by the same type of misconduct. And so now, as you and I predicted, all these prosecutions are getting dismissed. What do you make of it all?
First, let me just say it's a tragedy. I've tried to make the point repeatedly as this misconduct comes out that the real victims are the public, because it's an important public safety function of the DOJ that now they're not able to do in individual cases. But man, oh man, talk about a total degradation in a specific district. The Northern District of Illinois, Ben, as you know, is one of the most important 5 in the country. Maybe this is a big one, and you have a whole bench here that apparently is just basically lost faith in the prosecutors before them. Everyone's entitled to a presumption of innocence, and yet in a well-functioning Department of Justice, the conviction rate is, as you know, having been a defense lawyer, very, very high. That's because prosecutors choose the cases carefully, bring the ones they can prove, bring the ones where the people have done the offenses, and you come to understand that as a judge. And that's the sort of tailwind that it's great for a prosecutor, but it's also great for the public because, even though some jaundiced people don't believe it, at least in the previous Department of Justice, that's what people were doing. They were working with integrity. So now the word goes out, and the whole thing is just you have prosecutors coming in and judges having an almost reflexive skepticism toward them. The very opposite. You mentioned Boutros here. That's the U.S. attorney. Now he's a guy who, unlike some of these sort of political appointees, he was an AUSA in that office for several years, I think 5 or 6. He's a little bit of a Todd Blanche character that way. He knows the difference, should know the difference. But in the Broadview 6 case that you mentioned, they had this horrific misconduct in the grand jury, and Boutros comes out and apologizes to the court, but then proceeds to trash the defendants anyway, some of whose cases were being dismissed. And the judge said, you're snatching defeat from the jaws of victory here, that it's irrelevant how bad they are. That doesn't mean with bad defendants you can violate grand jury rules. And now you have, in this case, a different judge calling him out personally and tagging a perception that they ascribe to him that the office is dysfunctional. They are the most repeat players. The federal judges and the U.S. Attorney's Office, they're in front of each other every day. And if all the judges, and that's a pretty big court, I think at least a dozen in Northern District of Illinois, who just when a prosecutor shows up, they think, I don't know if I'm going to be getting it straight here. And what am I expecting from those guys? And the office is dysfunctional. I mean, that is something that harms even in a normal bank robbery case and something that has no political valence, but they're just thinking these guys are a mess. They're a politicized mess, but also they're feckless and they can't even do, it is so basic, the kind of, as you were saying, grand jury misconduct that they're doing, and what does it say of an entire office that it could happen? That's the question judges are now asking and thinking, these guys, they are not, there's nothing special about them and no reason to think that they've done it right or they're doing their jobs, or even if the people are guilty, no reason to think they're going to hew to the constitutional guidelines. I don't have a presumption of regularity anymore. That is like a body blow. And again, the real impact is to the public, because it means the cases that if there was a presumption of regularity would be accepted because people are in fact honest and acting in good faith. They used to be the Department of Justice. Now those people can't necessarily get convicted, and that's a cost borne by the public.
Everybody make sure you subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube channel. It's called Talking Feds, where I get a lot of my legal news from. So once this video is over, just search Talking Feds. Tell Harry I say hi in the comments, and subscribe here as well. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Ben. We always love seeing those comments.
New Meidas merch. Head to store.MeidasTouch.com today and get yourself the best pro-democracy gear and show your support. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.